Hi there. This is a quick video that I put together to explain what the residential listing agreement is. We're going to go through all of the documents that are part of this packet. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me, call me, or text me afterwards, and I will be happy to answer anything for you. The one that you have to sign will obviously look a little bit different because it'll have all of your information in it. And today we're going to go over a somewhat blank version for you to understand. So the first page is our disclosure regarding agency relationships. This basically outlines what a seller's agent is, what a buyer's agent is, and what the responsibilities of both buyers and sellers are, and that agents can represent both buyers and sellers. If that were to ever be the case, I would obviously disclose that to you. As the seller, you of course have some responsibilities as well to make this deal go through. I'm a facilitator and a resource to make sure we can get the property sold, but there are things that you'll have to do to make sure that can happen as well, and you're the decision maker at the end of the day. Moving on, this document talks about the legal definitions of words that are throughout this document. For example, what is an agent? What is a buyer? What is a seller's agent? This is the document that I always tell people, if you need something to help you fall asleep at night, probably read this one. Then we'll move on. This is the official residential listing agreement. So here you'll have the date the document was prepared, your information here. So I'll just put my name as a placeholder. The brokerage that I work with, Grounded Real Estate. And then here we'll have all of your property information. So the address, the city, the county, the state, and the zip code. And then we'll also include the assessor's parcel number, which is kind of like the property's ID number for taxes. Then we jump into the listing period. It'll be from the start date of our relationship, from the start date of our working relationship until the time frame that we decide upon. Then we'll have the listing price here. I'll put a placeholder number here. If this is a manufactured home or a probate sale, we would check either of those boxes. The commission that I charge is 3%. We've had that conversation already, and if we haven't, we will have it prior to you signing the document. Additional compensation to seller's broker if a buyer is unrepresented. This is a box that will be checked, and the reason being is there might be an instance where somebody puts an offer on your house that doesn't have an agent. And so I will have to do a little bit of extra work to make sure that they get all the documents to sign, make sure that they understand everything. I'm not representing them, but just making sure that they're getting everything that they need in order for us to have a smooth transaction with the appropriate documents. So if that is the case, it would be an extra 1% to you to help facilitate that and the extra work that I'll have to do. Obviously, we would review that offer. I would make you aware if you select that offer, then the commission would be 1% higher than whatever we've agreed upon. This next section is the continuation of right to compensation for broker identified prospective buyers. So basically what this says is if the listing agreement ends or gets canceled at any point, within 60 days, if you decide to sell your property to a buyer that I brought in, I would still have rights to getting paid. So it's just a protection there so that sellers don't use an agent and then we bring you a buyer and then they cancel our agreement and then just try to sell it on their own and try to cut us out. We've already done that work. We've already probably listed your home at that point. We brought you a qualified buyer. So in all fairness, it's just to make sure that we get paid for the work and the network that we have to bring you a qualified buyer. Next section is the obligation to pay a previous broker. So if you had a previous listing agreement with somebody, we would include that here or make sure that that has expired before we get into contract on a new listing agreement. Any items that you'd like to make sure are listed to be included with the sale or excluded, we can include those here in this section. If you have any leased or liened items, we would be sure to check the appropriate boxes. And if there are any smart home features that you want to make sure are included and or excluded with the sale, we would list them here. For example, a ring camera, alarm system, smart plugs or bulbs, those kinds of things. And then we move on to section E, MLS and public marketing. So this section talks about it will be listed in our primary listing service, which in this area is MetroList. So here is where we'll have the discussion on whether or not you are willing to pay a buyer's agent for bringing you a qualified buyer. So these two boxes will be checked saying that if you agree, I am allowed to advertise that you are willing to offer concessions to pay a buyer's agent, but I will never say how much you're willing to provide in any sort of written form. Agents and buyers will include what they're asking for in their offers if they're asking for anything. We would check this box if you didn't want me to use photographs or anything on the MLS that would then be added onto Zillow or Redfin. I would recommend against that because it's important for people to be able to see what the house looks like, and that will intrigue them to come in and take a look at it. If we're in a high offer situation or high buyer demand situation, we can always set a date and time that we want to review offers. I typically leave this blank just so we can have that conversation and decide once we get on market. Here, the default is to not present any buyer letters to a seller, and I would recommend leaving it that way just because if you review buyer letters and there's some information in there that is identifying to the buyer, and you decide to move forward with them because of that, you could potentially be liable for going against the Fair Housing Discrimination Act of California. So my job is to help protect you. So I would just say let's not review any buyer letters. Investigations or reports, natural hazard disclosure is typically one that is provided by the seller. I always recommend, again, and we might have already had this conversation, doing general home inspections, pest inspections, and any other inspections just to make sure that you stay in control. Those are all things that we can either make small repairs that might be needed or upload with the listing so that everybody already has that information when they bring us offers and it keeps you more in control. If there are any exceptions to ownership or title, it would be listed here. And then if you needed to find a replacement property before selling this one, we would make sure to check this box. And then if you want to opt out of any of these things, like having a lockbox or a sign, we would check those appropriate boxes. And then under additional terms, I typically leave this sentence here just to make sure that we're not, solely locked in on a price. The listing price will be determined at market date. And what that means is, depending on how long it takes us to get your property on the market, I'll always revisit the comps to see what's recently sold, if anything's changed, and we can revise the listing price based on, when we're going into the market. If we need to check any of these boxes, we will have that discussion. And then basically everything after here is the legal language as to what pertains to each of these sections in the grid. So you can definitely read through that in the document that I've sent over to you for signature. And then there will be signatures down here at the bottom. This is the multiple listing service addendum. What this outlines is what a multiple listing service is. So basically what Zillow and Redfin pull from is the MLS, what information we provide into the MLS before and after the sale. And then it kind of talks about some of the benefits of using it, those being that it gets you more exposure, higher impact, and more eyes are able to be seen on the property. The MLSs do link to, like I said, Zillow and Redfin and all those things. So once we upload it on there, those websites will pull it onto their sites and have it in their platform as well. If there's any instructions that you want to have specifically for me, we can have that conversation, check these boxes as appropriate and include them. And then here, this one will probably be checked on the date that we have discussed that we want to list the property. So again, we can always do a modification of terms if that changes at any point, but that will probably have something in it when you're going to sign it. This is just kind of saying that your MLS data is on the internet. So section 5 talks about photographs. Basically what this says is I don't necessarily have a way to prevent anybody from taking pictures every time they go into the house. So we can check this box that says, like, I just have to write in there that the taking of photos is only limited to inspectors or appraisers. So there would be signatures here on this section. And then this page talks about broker compensation advisory, saying that commissions are fully negotiable, which we have likely had that conversation. I have a percentage that I charge for the services that I offer because of all the things that I offer my clients and how I take care of them. So if you have any questions about that, happy to have that conversation with you again. This is all the same document. This next one is the possible representation of more than one buyer or seller. So basically it says that at the same time, I'm working with multiple buyers and multiple sellers. If at any point I become in a situation where it could be dual agency, where I'm representing you as a seller and also a buyer, I would make sure to disclose that to you. I would never share any information about you and what you're able to do, or the buyer and what they're able to do. For example, I would never tell the buyer, oh, I know that they're willing to go down to this much. And I would never tell you as a seller, oh, the buyer can come up to this much. So we would get pretty factual on the information that we're sharing, but everything would be disclosed as to if there's any sort of dual agency. This is the Fair Housing and Discrimination Advisory, so it goes all through the protected classes. So you could take a peek through that as well. And then this is a seller's advisory, just saying that there are general disclosures and duties that you're responsible for. It is really important to disclose, disclose, disclose. If you think that it's something you should tell the buyer, then you should just go ahead and include it in the paperwork that we fill out. It is always better to over disclose than to under disclose, especially when it comes to deaths in the home or anything like that. Even if we're past the statute of limitations, which is 3 years, you never know. Somebody might be an open house, a neighbor might come and they might say something about it. So it's always better to just share that information, whatever you do have. And last is the California Consumer Privacy Act. It just says that I'm not going to share any of your personal information with anybody. So that is the last document in this packet. If you have any questions about it, please feel free to reach out to me. I hope this was helpful, and let's get to selling your home.